Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where it's about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of The Republic of Sarah. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This episode is the epitome of when it rains, it pours. Literally picking up where the last episode left off. Like, Sarah's entire world just got flipped upside down because not only is Corinne pissed at her about the whole Danny actually being Josh's dad, but now everyone heard it, so now it's out in the open. And Bella, being the MVP that she is, she handles everything because it's like, right, there's supposed to be a press conference afterwards, kind of questions, the media could ask questions and stuff like that. And there's like one reporter that's very snide about it, but Bella kind of puts him in his place, basically talking about like, right, you might look down upon what Sarah's trying to do. She's trying to give us breathing room in an intermedium so that we can eventually get all that we need to, like foreign aid and stuff like that, when we officially get recognized. So like, don't scoff at all that she's doing, trying to drag her just a little bit because of all like that personal stuff. It's like, no, she's doing the best she can, looking after the entire community. I would, she said it in a very elegant way, but it's like, what have you been doing with your life, dude? That type of thing. That's me putting a little stank on it, I guess you could say, but it's just kind of like, put him in his place. But obviously Danny and now Corinne, now her is like, oh great, everyone knew. And interestingly enough, Danny's upset with her as well, because it's not just Sarah that lied about it, but it's like, the fact is that she's like, I just found out myself that like you're the dad, you're Josh's dad. But he's like, no, I've been in Greylock for like 8 months. You didn't even throw it out there that there was a possible inkling that I could be his father. And she's like, really? The fact of the matter is, why would I? Like, why would I even share that with you? You who abandoned me when I needed you most. I didn't even find out about, me being pregnant. The symptoms, of it's like the morning sickness and stuff didn't pop up until afterwards. And you weren't in any position for me to contact you. So like, who are you to judge me? The fact is, I decided not to tell you, especially, I mean, when you actually look at the state of her life right now, it's kind of like, yeah. So like I said, it's one thing after another with Sarah, because she's trying to make things good with Corinne, but Corinne wants nothing to do with her, because it's like, I don't care what your reasoning is. The fact of the matter is, yes, I might have wanted Adam to be the dad, but that doesn't change the fact is, and it's what I brought up before, at the end of the day, Sarah took her choice away. Yeah, it's because Sarah, it is the thing of Sarah thought she knew better. It's like, right, if Danny was in Josh's life, that would complicate things. This is what Corinne wanted. It's like, no, you were doing what you thought was best for Corinne. Because once again, I brought it up countless times before. She was so quick to be so dismissive of the whole Danny thing, to be like, oh, you and Danny, that's just like nostalgia. That's like you getting caught up in it. Like, you don't actually. But then Corinne had to be like, no, I actually still do love Danny. And it's like, because Sarah is bringing her own bias into it, because of like, right, my idiot brother who ran away for 6 years, like, not just from you, but from me. So it's like, he's not reliable. He only came back into town because of this whole lighting thing. So it's like, even though they're in a better place, you can tell there is some resentment, which Corinne has her issues with them, rightfully so. So does Sarah. So a lot of that bias and resentment is going into like, her being a little prejudiced towards her brother in that regard. So, but for Corinne, it's just kind of like, yeah, you took that choice away from me. Like, regardless of it, it was my life. It's my choice to make. And you decided, to try and take control. And that's also the same thing where, like, AJ's not giving her any leeway either. Because it's like, no, like, this is it. You do everything that you believe is better. Like, you're the control freak that you are. Like, you're trying to control everybody's lives. You're making decisions for people because it's not your decision to make. It's not your choice to make. Because I think on top of that, AJ's still reeling with the whole, like, right, choice that Sarah made about putting that money towards Greylock as economy, as a whole, rather than giving that money to people. So it's the infrastructure of like, schools and they like giving it back to Greylock as a whole rather than the individual people with like a stimulus check. So like AJ's still kind of reeling from that a little bit, but I think this Corinne thing just kind of adds fuel to the fire she was already kind of having. It was like a spark, but then it just kind of grew because of this Corinne thing. Because it's like, once again, it's just like you're making a choice for other people, like thinking what's better for everyone. She obviously apologizes to her mom because her mom's like, right, she's like, when it comes to my sobriety, I always kind of wanted someone to hug me, but it's like, right, I sometimes need someone to tell me the cold, hard truth, to give me a kick in the butt. And it's like, I'm not going to hug you. And Sarah's like, I'm not here for a hug. I just want to apologize because you had every right to know. You're just like, suddenly I sprung it on you that you have a grandchild, and I had no right. It's not just Corinne I was lying to. It's everyone I was lying to, including you. Her dad doesn't take it as rough because her dad looks at it as a situation of, he understands like she was just trying to do what she thought was best for everyone. And for him, it's like, the fact is you're friends and everyone's pissed at you right now, but he's like, when the opportunity comes, you will get when the opportunity comes to make it everything right, you need to kind of take it, you know? And he's like, take it from someone who those opportunities came and he kept ignoring them until now. So, you know, so I thought that was sweet. Like, now that she's kind of building this rapport with her father again, for him to kind of give her that advice, to be a father in that moment. But then, once again, rain, it pours. The fact is, the State Department sends someone out. They're willing to arrest Paul. They're trying to arrest Paul, but it's like, right, there's still no extradition here. It's like, oh yeah, but you're trying to get recognized by the U.S.? Yeah, we're willing to do. I'm like, I mean, to be fair, we're talking like governments make a lot of deals behind people's backs regardless. So it's not like it's that big of a stretch for them to do that. It's kind of effed up. I mean, you're sure. I'm sure it's getting played up more because it's a TV show. It's a drama, so it has to be sensationalized a little bit. But I'm sure there's still some truth of like, right, the government makes a lot of deals that probably a lot of people aren't aware of because for the kind of, you know. So, but kind of dangling this in front of Sarah is kind of the ultimate, like, now what does she do? Like, she's been accused of, you know, making decisions for everyone else. So now that she knows this information, it's like, right, does she turn on her dad, who, yeah, she has had issues with him for nearly 2 decades. But at the end of the day, like, for these past couple months, he's been around, he's been a father, like, so I even think it's interesting. Her mom took the approach of like, I'm not going to hug you, but like that when you went to like the dad side of things, he hugged her, you know, and I guess that's almost like, once again, that weird parallel of just like the relationship, like Danny and their mom, as well as like Sarah and their dad, just like that interesting parallel of just like, also, I guess it's like the mother that was in their life versus the father that wasn't in their life. So, but Sarah brings it up to him about it. And I love, it's like, you know, it's like, right, they're not going to act on it immediately. You know, after her telling Paul, it's like, what they're going to do is try and find out if I have more information, if I'm sitting on anything else. And she's like, are you? He's like, oh, like this press secretary, their fantasy draft or something like that. Or POTUS trying to see if they could get to see the latest Star Wars movie earlier because they're POTUS. He's like, I'm basically a walking WikiLeaks. But it's like, yeah, he's giving all the information that he has, so like they will arrest him. She's like, get you a good lawyer. It's like, no, the point of what I'm doing was to create a paper trail. Like, there's no like fudging it. It's like, no, I'm guilty of sin. I thought what was going to happen, and I mean, it still could be, but I think no matter what the lawyer is, it's still not going to alleviate some of that, you know. Because obviously for Sarah, it's like, you should be heralded as a hero. But I thought what was going to happen is that Sarah's going to convince her mom or something to be his lawyer. I thought that's what, but it's like, he said, like, I could have a horse, you know, trying me in this situation and I'll still be found guilty, because it, like, the whole point of it is for there to be a paper trail, so there's no like plausible deniability. It's like, no, everything leads back to me, so it's like there's no means, you know, of getting around that. So he's kind of, like, you can tell immediately that he's leaning more towards being okay with the idea, because it's like, you know, because at the end of the day, Sarah told him, and he's even saying like, right, you telling me could end up being a mistake, because who's to say I won't run again? She's like, right, but you know, at least I was being honest, because at the very least, regardless of the end of the day, like, she wants to kind of make up for the fact that she wasn't honest with Corinne, with the people around her, so she wanted a kind of an opportunity to be honest in this regard. Like, she at least owed her dad that, considering, you know, where they stand relationship wise. And speaking of her parents, you know, even obviously Sarah and Danny's mom are struggling with any job opportunities. Normally with her credentials, any job would just be jumping for joy to get her. But she's like, yeah, like, there's 4 million different like outlets of like reviews of kind of like, hey, this is me. And she's even saying, or at least there's 4 million different versions of like my past being out there when I, like, you know, when I put it out there, what I did. And she's like, yeah, I'm kind of a meme, whatever that means. And so it's that on, like, never being able to escape her past, plus Sarah lying to her, finding out, wait, we had a grandchild this entire time we never knew about. It's like, how can you not be pissed? And for her dad, he had a very interesting perspective where essentially, like, the world is full of, like, darkness and complicated things. The fact of the matter is, our daughter lives in a trying. And at the end of the day, how can I fault her for that? Like, yeah, she might make some mistakes, because at the end of the day, she is human. And it's like, but as long as she is trying, like, how can I fault someone for doing that, you know? Living in the trying. And so that actually kind of sparked something in her as well, you know? But we'll kind of circle to that when we get to the end. But obviously, Corinne and Danny come to the, you know, it's like, right. Danny's like, hesitant because it's like, right, if I go through with this, you know, because it's like, if we do what Sarah's kind of had thrown out there and kind of planned, that means I would have, you know, I'd throw my hat in the ring, and that means we could basically keep Josh here in Greylock, you know, and kind of use that against Adam. And what gets Danny is like, right, like, I don't know if I'm ready to be a father. She's like, I'm not asking you to be a father. I'm asking for your signature. You weren't there for me. You know, you left me when I was 17 years old. You weren't there for me. When I was, you know, giving birth to Josh, you weren't there for me. When I was getting married, I wanted you to show up and whisk me away. You weren't there for me. You've never been there for me. You weren't there for Josh throughout any of this. So I need you to, for once, Danny, be there for me in this. And so it turns into the whole thing of, like, Adam's like, at the end of the day, I am Josh's dad. And she's like, you are a great dad. And at the end of the day, I'm not trying to take that away from you, but I am his mother. So he's like, she's like, if you want to do this, we can do this. I can pull out the nuclear option, which is Danny. I don't want that. We can split and be amicable about it, because yes, you have every right to, Josh needs you. You are been a father. You're a staple in his life, but I'm also his mother, and I'm not going to let you take my child away from me. I'm like, I like that. It's like, right. It's like, no, I came locked and loaded. I already talked to my lawyer about it. So if I pull the trigger on this, I'm pulling the trigger on this. But I don't want to. This is just meant to be like kind of like a nuclear situation of, like, it's meant to be a deterrent, you know? Like, we can get nasty. We need to get nasty, but I don't want it to, because Josh shouldn't have to grow up in a broken home. We should be able to kind of handle this amicably so that he can turn out okay. So what ends up being the interesting factor in a lot of this too is, like, you know, going back to Sarah's situation, is she's struggling with everything, and then the whole thing with Doris happens. For her, it's like the clinic that Doris could, the clinic in Greylock was 6 miles away. No, it wasn't even 6 miles. It was 6 minutes away. And they ended up having to go to a different facility because Greylock wasn't, like, because basically Sarah blames her, because, like, if I had gotten on top of Greylock's, like, getting recognized and getting, like, the federal funding and help from the U.S., like FEMA support and everything, we could have gotten, like, maybe that could have been prevented. So, like, she blames herself, because, like, Doris' death is on me. Like, that clinic was 6 minutes away, like the one that's in town. Obviously, the one outside of it was much further, but it's like she was alive for 14 minutes in that car, you know? And Sarah puts that on herself, and, you know, even which I think is so surprising, and I think it speaks volumes about his current circumstances. Grover being like, maybe it was her time, and it's like, you know, it's like you're doing the best that you can. You shouldn't blame yourself. And she's like, yep, if you say so, Grover. You know, because Grover, you know, is trying to make her feel better, because it's like, right, that wasn't your fault. Like, things happen that, like, it was beyond your control. Like, you have been trying to get us recognized, but it's like the U.S. has been slow rolling us at any means necessary. But also, like, you know, like, how could you predict, like, I mean, like, things turning out the way they did, like, the aftermath, like, who knew that was all gonna, like, kind of, it's just kind of the, you know, God's will, and just, like, things working out, sadly. And it's like, once again, just it literally rained and poured in that particular regard, you know, both in a metaphorical and literal sense. But it's just kind of like, what I think, because Grover is kind of more focusing on the good rather than the bad, actually saying that he thinks he'll be okay, telling patients, like, it's okay, you can rest, you don't have to worry about me anymore. You know, I think I'm going to be okay, with Tyler's video giving him more of the good than the bad, you know, kind of replacing, like I said, last episode, all he ever did was kind of focus on the bad. Like, the last bit of time he had with Patience, rather he wished it was him instead of Patience. and her being gone and losing her in the aftermath of all that, but having the good from the Tyler's video, like, I think that kind of cemented a lot. And then plus therapy, he thinks he's in a better position. So I think that's why he was able to kind of make a statement like, oh, maybe it was her time. Like, you would think, considering his circumstances, he'd probably be the last person to actually say something like that. So there is that element to things. We have Bella asking her dad if she can, like, skip spring semester to kind of intern for Sarah the entire time. I was like, oh, you know your dad's super not going to be okay with that. He's like, no, I'm actually fine with you working with Sarah. I'm just not letting you drop out of school for it and everything. So he's hesitant about it until he sees Bella, like, you know, video of like her as the press secretary, like handling things for Sarah, like during like her, like, and he saw that side of her that he's never seen before. And it's like, you know, he was actually proud of her in that moment. So, I actually really like that he actually came to her. He's like, I'm sorry. Like, the reason why I was so pissy towards you about what you were doing is because you took my job, and in 24 hours, you were doing it better than I was. So I couldn't ask for a better person to be looking after my daughter. That my daughter, like, look at who she's become. Like, she has become so brave. She's become so outspoken. Like, she has, you know, learning from the best example of what to do. And it's like, I owe that to you. So she'll homeschool. Plus, you know, that way I get to spend more time with her. But that way she can dedicate to, you know, interning for you the entire time. So I think that's kind of dope that, like, it's especially with Sarah going through all that she's going through right now, that William will be there to kind of extend an olive branch to shake her hand in that regard, because, you know, I think it hits and it means a lot considering the bad blood between them. So it's almost like a more official passing of the torch in that regard, like that handshake and everything, like that moment between them. It felt good, you know, considering like where things were between them before now to where they are now. So I thought that was kind of a pretty dope way of handling that. Danny was initially pissed at Sarah. Obviously, it's like, oh, it's not just a Josh thing. Now I'm finding out about the dad thing. It's like, oh, you're going to throw him to the wolves because of your issues with him. Like, tell me you're not going to turn dad in. And for her, she has no choice because of the whole recent thing with Doris. It's like, no, like, even if I have to, like, give dad, I have to, because Greylock needs it now. Like, so something that happened to Doris, like, never happens again, so that, you know, it's for the greater good. But Danny brings up, you shouldn't have to sacrifice someone. And because there have been sacrifices before that, you know, like Grover had to lose the house that him and Patience built. Someone else had to lose their house. So once again, it's always interesting that person always falls a little to the wayside in the confines of the story, but still. But it is the conversation of like, right, sacrificing one person. I mean, because it does come off like a, right, you're willing to do this even more so because it's our dad. So that, I think, you know, played a role in that. So obviously Danny shows up. He's like, Dad, don't show up. Like, if you that dinner with Sarah, it's a trap. Like, they'll be waiting for you. Got to get out of here. It's like, I'm glad I've gotten to know you, Dad. You know, his dad being like, he was thinking about and looking at the picture of them, and he's like, right, you're right. I got to get out of here. It'll be a couple years before you probably ever see me again, but I love you, son. And he was saying that being a dad, you are made for it. You were built for that. And the moment he was doing that, looking at the picture, and when he leaves, I'm like, he's not leaving. I figured he was going to go make the deal himself. Because I knew because of everything, it's like, right, he ran away before. I knew after everything, he wasn't going to run away again. When his daughter and his son have been so willing to welcome him back in their lives, it's like, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So he went and got like the donut she liked, but he also made the deal. But Sarah's like, no. I decided I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to sacrifice one person just to say. He's like, no, but this is for great. Like, she's like, no, I refuse to make the deal. He's like, too late. I already did. He's like, you know, I've watched you for these past months be the incredible leader you are. He's like, I want to be like you when I grow up. And I was like, it was such a sweet moment because she's like, no, you know what? You don't have to do this. Like, in that moment, it's actually kind of sweet. Like, she turns almost into that little girl of like, no, Dad, don't go. Like, you know, and I feel that on some level. It's a weird comparison to make. I'm going to make this all about me because I will always hold on to it because my dad talked about something when I was young. Like, I was a kid. My dad's a truck driver and he had to go to work, and apparently it broke my dad's heart when I said the line, Dad, please don't go. It's a different circumstance, but it's like, for him, it's like, he's like, he always reminds me, like, that is always stuck with him. Like, I'm 29 now. That was like me when I was in elementary school. And like, I've heard him constantly over the years bring it up of like that not being being home as often as he wanted to be around me as often, because he's going like most of the week as a truck driver. So like days at a time. So it kind of felt like that, of almost like being that, like she's, an adult, but you almost turn into that little girl being like, daddy, don't go type of thing. So like, it hits you like, oh, like it's a sweet and beautiful moment, but also, cause it's also like, not only that perspective of it, but also like the fact is that she is in that position to feel that way. Like even he had brought it up, like you really wouldn't have cared about me beforehand, but now it's like, it's like we're in a good place, and it is like I love you. Like the fact is I've taken so much from you, it's only fair that I give some back. So obviously Sarah sits down with Danny at the the Rock, and their special place, and she basically is like, yeah, I made the deal, like not making, like trying not, it's like, right, it should fall back on me because this was me in the first place. But even though it was her dad's, because even Danny is like, oh, dad made the deal, right? And she's kind of like, I didn't mean it. She kind of slipped up in that regard. But Danny's like, it's really hard to hate her right now. He tried, but he can't, because regardless of the whole Josh thing, at the end of the day, it's like, you are my sister and I love you. And even him being like, I didn't like what you did with the Josh thing, but I understand. Like, he's like, look at what I've done to Corinne's life since being in it. And it's like, I've thrown it into chaos. Well, look what I've done. So he was, waiting for his transfer, but she was like, no, you need to stay in Greylock, because it's like, look at what the good you've done, in my life. Look at the good you've done to Greylock. You've become the best version of yourself since being here, coming back and everything. So you owe that to kind of like be there for Josh. It's like, right, no more, when it comes to like dad, for example, like it's no more running for him. It's got to be the same thing for you, because she talks about like, look at our family. Like our family is so screwed up, and we've heard a lot of people, like the amount of people we've heard is long. That list is longer than an arm. But at the end of the day, like, look at our parents. They're working so hard to basically fix themselves and make up for their mistakes. If they're both willing to try so hard, then maybe, there's hope for us too, that we can as well, And so ultimately Danny goes to Corinne, and it's like, I want to be in Josh's life. I'm not going anywhere. She's like, if you're in, you're going to be you have to be all in. There's no like leaving him. And, she's like, it's complicated because me and Adam are going to stay in separate bedrooms until we can fully explain to Josh what's going on. You add in a third parent there, but for him, it's like, I'll wait as long as it takes, because I want to be there in Josh's life. He is my son, I want to be there for him. And before he could leave, because he's like, take as long as you need to like work it out to, whatever you're comfortable with. But before he leaves, she's like, you kept the skeleton thing. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, I did too. So it's like, it potentially sets up that, hey, maybe there is something there too. When it's past everything, maybe there is still some hope. It's going to be weird. It's going to be awkward, especially with the whole Adam thing. Regardless, that's still going to be a pretty sore wound. Once again, it was all meant to just scare Adam into realizing, like, right, I am being a little crazy manic with the way I'm handling this whole situation. It was just meant to scare him off. But at the end of the day, like, it's going to be interesting to see where their story goes. Along with that, Sarah tries to make amends with AJ by handing her like a treaty, and it's got her name on it. That basically, I forgot how she basically explained it. That basically they were setting up. She was getting help from New Hampshire's Governor Taggart, like by owing her one, that basically they can step in to stop a company from doing what basically they're doing. But the company that was about to buy the facility that AJ's dad was at. It's interesting too, because they set it up that like Tyler's sister knew about, because she was taking shifts at that place. So, and he like drops off like donuts or something to that place. So like Tyler knew, which I'm wondering, like, potentially in the future, will they like introduce more with Tyler's sister? Like, we reference her, but we don't see her or meet her. So I'm like, wondering if they'll kind of play into that a little bit, more going forward. But, regardless, circling back to it, AJ's like, wait, so you put yourself in a position to be in Leslie's back pocket to help me, and she's like, yes. And you are right that, like, I don't understand, like, what people like your dad or anyone like him in his position, would need, but you obviously do. So that's why I put your name on the tree, because you should be the one who knows more about this, who looks over the whole situation. So like it's your thing. It's yours to look over. You have every right to it, considering you are on Greylock's council. So it only makes the most sense. And so Sarah goes up there, and AJ's like, thanks, Sarah. She's like, you're welcome. And it's not like a thing of like, oh, I'm trying to do the right thing. She's even saying like, right, I am doing what is better for the entirety of Greylock. I'm still doing that, but doing this is for the best, because putting you in this position can help us in the long run. So it's a personal thing while also still being something for the greater good of Greylock. Granted, what that looks like when the governor comes, comes a knocking for that favor or whatever, we'll have to, that's a door we'll have to open once we get to that point. But other than that, we have Sarah, once again kind of bashing herself, being so mad at herself, and Grover being there to kind of ease that for her. And it's like, you got to learn to like be forgiving. It's like, not just towards other people, but yourself. Because even Sarah said it herself when she was talking to her mom at the beginning, like, she's always been a fixer. She's always had to be the fixer in her family, and now that's translated to every aspect of life. When that's her core aspect, when you've always had to play that, of course, it's going to start trickling out into your life. And now for her, it's like, that's a bad habit of mine but like, Grover's like, you didn't ask to be in that position, but we made you our North Star. Like, we need you, like, because everyone's got their issues. Like, AJ had an affair with a married woman. Like, Danny he cheated on his fiance. Corinne cheated on her husband. Like, everyone's got those issues that they're mistakes that they don't want to swallow them. Everyone hopes. So it's like, everyone hopes that their past mistakes don't swallow them. And it's just kind of like, we look to you to be guidance and our North Star of like, trying to do the right thing, because you've always done that. You've always tried to help people. You always put people for, as her dad says, as Grover saying, like, you are selfless in what you do. So you might make some mistakes, but that's because at the end of the day, you are human. And it's kind of like a thing of, if you are able to stand up after all your mistakes and keep moving forward, then it gives the rest of us hope. That's how you are North Star. You show that if you can move past your mistakes, so can we. And we see that kind of trickled out at the ending with everyone's stories in that regard. Sarah and Danny's mom, she, shows her growth over her sobriety, where, not being able to get jobs because, shadows of her mistakes are a lot longer than she kind of gave them credit for. Then on top of that, finding out about grandchild. She's like, normally that would send me to the bottle, but because, in fact, it sent me here to a meeting, so all I can do is try. So she took what Paul has said, and she's kind of running with it. And so we see her kind of writing her story, because everyone's got their narrative, and it's like, right, it's time for me to put my truth out there. So she's going to write another book, but this time from her perspective, her, put things in her own words, because I think that way she kind of takes a little bit of, it's her owning what she's done in her own words, while also, taking back the story and making it hers again, and rather than it just being the world's to kind of take with and do what they want with, type of thing, which the world still will do, but it's like, it's her taking those words back and making them her own. So you have that, like I said, the Danny and Corinne situation. What's next for Greylock with this whole getting recognized situation? But then we also have a stinger at the end where Sarah wakes up and you're like, oh yeah, you and Grover, huh? And it's like, cool. That was I was wondering where we were gonna get there, but it's like, oh, we got there from like we were both drinking and we got caught up in the moment. There's already a thing between us, both of us. Sarah dealing with everything she's dealing with. Grover going in the right direction of dealing with everything with patience, even admitting like, yeah, I still have a long road ahead. So going into a relationship already kind of like, before of trying to enter that lane got complicated before, not just because of the patience thing, but also like the aftermath of it. Grover being like, "Are we good?" And Sarah's like, "Oh no, we are." It's like you could tell it's still a little weird and awkward in the aftermath of that, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where that goes. Things with AJ's dad, like her being able to keep him in Greylock, and the facility staying where it is, that it doesn't become like overpriced and stuff like that. So I thought in totality, I think it's a really nice like way to like wrap up a lot of these stories while also leaving room for them to continue, as well as the story of Greylock just entering its first chapter, that there is a lot more. This is just the start, that there's the beginning of there's more for not just the personal stories, but this community and story as a whole. Sadly, I just found out that the Republic of Sarah was sadly canceled. The thing that came up, I think it was a Deadline article that it came out like Thursday, I guess, of last week, which is kind of such a bummer because I really enjoyed this story. Like, you can have your issues with it, that's fine, but it's just like I really enjoyed like the story, just not just like the personal stories, but also just like the community and the story as a whole of like, you know, forming your own nation and stuff like that. It's resolved enough in a way where it's like cool, like you could still walk away being like, right, there's still so much story to tell, but it leaves itself in enough of a bubble where you can be like, I can still walk away somewhat satisfied, but you would still want these stories to reach their conclusion. Like, will it all work out in the end? Would Greylock become its own nation, or would everything end up crumbling and they'd have to go back to becoming a part of New Hampshire at the very end? Like, that could definitely end up being a story like years down the line. It's so sad because it's like, I feel like the story never had a chance to run, just as it's like, you know, as it's sprinting towards like a finish line. Like, I feel like it wasn't able to like fully catch its stride. Like, I think story wise and everything, it was hitting its stride, but it just like, it was cut short before it had its chance to continue its stride. From my personal opinion, you know, it can vary degree, because I know there are people who just genuinely don't like the show, and that's fine. I'm not going to fight you on you not enjoying it. You enjoy it. It's just like, for me personally, from my standpoint, I do enjoy it, and I'm kind of bummed to hear that. I don't see this being a situation where another network will pick it up. Maybe, hopefully, I'll keep my fingers crossed, hoping that you know, something does change, like that someone does decide to pick it up. Like, who would? I don't know if there's a large enough audience, whether the show has a good enough reception for that, but I would hope for a season 2. I would love to see Greylock's journey continue, you know, not just for one season. I'd want the show to have like a full life. Like, if they included like, you know, I'm a bare minimum guy of like, hey, 5 seasons seems like the good spot. Like, let something run for 5 seasons. If we're able to get like a little less, like 3 or 4, that's fine too. But I think 5 would be a nice benchmark. Like, at the end of the day, if they can tell all the story they would want to tell in like 2 or 3 seasons, that's fine as well. Just take out however long you need to tell like the full story of what you'd want to tell, like, you know, and continue these stories and just where things like, so they, like I said, just there's enough cliffhangers you can definitely see where things could branch out more, but also at the same time, it puts you in a situation where it's like, it kind of can be a finale in its own right. You just walk away with a lot of stuff like unanswered and unclear. Like I said, it's just a bummer. I obviously would choose having more of the show rather than just this being the end, but it neatly ties certain things up in certain regards, is all I'm saying, while also leaving them well open enough for the advancements and continuation of those stories. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.